everyone, and welcome to another episode of Financially Ever After. I'm really excited today to talk about a topic that, when I did my research, I actually didn't find a lot of information on, especially for us Indians. So, without further ado, let me first invite Ankit on, who is my co-pilot in this entire thing. So Ankit is co-founder at Wealthup along with me. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, every fortnight we do conversations around real topics that people are thinking about when it comes to their finances. And we wanted to do this topic for a really long time now. We talk a lot about what is important when it comes to your money, and a lot of people do talk about childcare or bringing a child into their life and planning finances around that. But the fact is that the pet care market in India is projected to hit 16 billion by 2032. This is being fueled by the number of people getting pets, an increase in disposable income, and a lot of people choosing to be pet parents over having children as well, right? So there are so many articles that talk about the benefits of pet ownership, how it reduces anxiety, stress, it improves your cardiovascular health. And I found this article in the Harvard Health Publishing, which also talks about how pet parents get to socialize with other pet parents, and that also improves their social life as a whole. So there are a lot of benefits of course, bringing pets into our lives, but there is a cost associated both financially and emotionally. Now, when I was thinking about who do I want to invite to talk about this very important topic, there are a lot of people that came to my mind. But the one person who I thought would do a very good job with it is Aachal, who is also my friend and a fellow co-founder. So a little bit about Aachal. She's the co-founder of All Things Talent. They help organizations in solving their people problems and work on leadership development as well. I've known Aachal for a really long time because we're both part of a founder community here in Bangalore. And I've seen very closely her relationship with her dog, Cookie. And because I'm the founder of Wealthup, and invariably we would end up talking about finances involved with being a pet parent and owning a dog. And I just feel like she would be the best person to talk about, or to give a very honest, practical, and real idea of what it means and really what it takes to bring a dog into your life. As you all know, my co-founder Ankit is also part of this conversation along with me. He is a graduate from BITS Pilani. He then went on to do investment banking with UBS in New York. And we both started Wealthup because we wanted people to make smarter financial decisions. And, we say our vision is that we want people to retire happier, richer, and sooner. So all of these conversations that we are having is essentially to help you make those really smart financial decisions. So welcome, Aachal. Welcome, Ankit. Thank you so much, Aachal, for being part of this conversation. Okay,
Thanks, Medha.
so
Thank you for
okay,
having me, Medha. Hi, Ankit.
Hi, Michelle.
okay. So Aachal, let's start at the very beginning, right? If you can tell me, why did you decide to get a dog in the first place?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, thank you for having me and trusting me with a lot of the experience that I'm going to share today. Before we start and I answer any of your questions, Medha and Ankit, I do want to mention that anything that I share today is purely my experience, right? I'm not a professional, I'm not an expert in the canine areas of anything for that matter, but I have had enough and more experience on the need for better financial planning for a pet, because frankly I was clueless, right? And hopefully that will uncover as we go through the conversation today. So I'm going to be my authentic self. If I say something which is not accurate, I'm going to ask the audience to be kind to all of us, because this is purely my experience that I'm going to be sharing today. But yeah, coming back to your question, Medha.
Yeah.
um, so this is around 5 years back when Ankur's my husband, for those of you who don't know. Ankur and I decided that, not decided, we're thinking on the lines of getting a pet. The reason we absolutely don't know. It was just probably midlife crisis, where the need to sort of take things slowly. I was wanting to retire from the corporate world, right? And one of the things, this was just pre-COVID, by the way, when the thought started coming in. By the way, I was fearful of dogs all my life because a few street dogs had once chased me. But still, I found dogs cute nonetheless and decided, hey, let's explore, let's go find out. Frankly, I had no friends with dogs who had dogs. I had absolutely no knowledge, information of what it takes to get a dog home. I had no idea about the breeds, the needs of each breed, the fact that there is an adoption process, there is the buying process, there are so many things, and what is not right or wrong for that matter, right? Honestly, uh, we were naive. We felt like having companionship in a dog. It was an initial thought, and I Googled how to get a dog home, where to buy a dog, not knowing anything that there were other channels, right, of getting a dog home, or the fact that it was important to know the breed, etc., beyond the cuteness that we see on Instagram, right? There's more to it. So we went to the first place. Frankly, it was a breeder, not a very nice one. I would never recommend someone to follow what we do. Okay, but still sharing my learnings authentically. Went there with an idea that hey, let's go and find out. Let's ask 10 questions, and maybe we will get to learn something before we decide to get a dog home. The first puppy he went gave me on my hands. I thought the dog was too cute to let go. It was you can make fun of me, something I absolutely don't recommend to your audiences, by the way, right? And I was like, hey, let's take the puppy home. I knew nothing about dogs. I did not know there was anything called annual vaccinations. I didn't know they had to be taken to a vet. I did not know one vet around, right? So I didn't do my research. I didn't take any pre puppy counseling from an expert to understand our lifestyle and see if it matches, right? Um, so to answer your question and not getting into a lot of specifics, that's how that's how Cookie happened to us to begin with.
So it's interesting that you mention, all of the details, and we will unpack, I think, a lot of
Sure.
it as we go through. But I think the first thing is, so when you did get this puppy and you were so unprepared, how did your lifestyle change, or did your lifestyle change? And if yes, then how?
But before
Uh,
that, Achal, I mean, what the way you guys approach to bringing Cookie home. How, I mean, if you're aware, generally, how many people do it like this? Ki in terms
uh,
of just an impulse decision, ki is getting a
No, I don't have a metric or a number or research based something to show you, but I know it for a fact, if not as impulsive as the decision like we did, a
Mhm.
lot of people want to get dogs based on the breeds that they find cute, right? You see Instagram posts which are all, created, right? Nice videos, cool videos, funny videos, but that's not how life is with pets, right? They are a lot of work, there are a lot of commitment.
Mm.
To me, getting a dog home is no less than planning for a child, because you just don't have to make them survive. The idea is to give them a good life, right? In fact, that is also why, right? If you see, we would call pet parents as pet owners at one point in time, and now we call them pet parents, right? We've also all evolved to understanding that once you get, a life home, even if it's a dog or a different breed or a different pet, it is our responsibility to give them the right that they deserve, life that they deserve. And so, for example, Medha and I at one point in time had a conversation about her saying, hey, I really love huskies, right? And I asked her, do you understand what it means to get a husky home, right? There's nothing right or wrong about it. I'm not someone who judges and saying, no, only get indies. I think indies also deserve all the respect, and understanding their breed is extremely important. That's my point of view, right? But understanding what a breed's needs are, and will they be able to live with you, will you be able to go it, I felt it's very important, and those have been my learnings. Right or wrong, I don't know. So that's what I'd say, Ankit, to your answer. But
Very
many
cool.
people, I think Instagram influences a lot of people to get pets home without thinking through.
Right. Amita,
Yeah,
please go
so yeah, so what were some of the changes that happened, from after you brought Cookie into your home?
Sure. I think first and foremost, what we didn't realize is that, in this is our case, does not have to be every person's case who gets a pet home. Cookie was predisposed to some health conditions. Okay, and we had no idea as to what those meant, because we were so unprepared and did not do any research whatsoever. So I think that was like the first shocker. The first day when he came home late in the night because he was unwell, I had to do my research on who the vets are and had to take him to a vet, rush him to a vet, right? And the vet really sat me down because I was so nervous and unprepared, obviously. And I figured that we had done such a huge mistake by not doing our research and study. Helped me understand all of that. So one was really start. I think the first change in our life was starting to really doing our research well on what it means to have a dog. Now that we have taken this ownership, it is on us to prepare ourselves, right? It is a commitment that we've made, and we made it for life. So that was one, really educating ourselves on everything canine. Okay, and I'll talk about various things that we had to, because that will also lead to financial impact, right? Second, I think dogs, like kids, thrive on a lot of structure. That means no matter what happens, COVID or no COVID, whether you're well or you're unwell, you have to wake up and take your dog for a walk every single day, right? Even if you slept late, even if it means that you change your lifestyle. So uncle and I were also very, my husband and I were very generally cool, not really having structures or discipline to how we live, when we sleep, when we wake up. We were all okay, right? A lot of work from home, of course. We were privileged to have that. I think getting a pet home, the biggest change that that happened in our lives is having a lot of structure, right? Needing to go back home because you know what, I have a dog who needs to be taken care of, right? And we've had this conversation so many times, and that is the biggest change that happened. And third, I think change that happened for us is trying to plan for things, especially financially, because like I said, my dog was predisposed to some conditions, right? And making sure that we plan things better than what we were used to. So these three were like the major changes that happened.
Okay.
Other than,
It's
of
been
course, a lot of happiness that dogs bring to your life. So no
So,
complaints.
Achal, when you were talking, I could like relate to my experience of, I mean, just being a parent, because like, again, you have to feed the baby, you have to, so it's just essentially like you have another life that you're responsible for. So, and then, like you just have to grow up and be an adult, I guess.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And that's exactly what happened with us. And I think for people who are watching this, uh, like you have to really think about it if you're prepared to do this, right? No matter what, or if you have the means for the dog to be taken care of.
So, what were some of the early surprises that were there? Because I mean, again, going into this with not much prep, what were some things that were like, "अरे ये तो हमें पता ही नहीं था."
Uh, okay, interesting question, because every single thing about dogs was a surprise to me. Like I said, I knew nothing. I just found the puppy so cute. I just wasn't ready to let go, right? To an extent that while getting the puppy home, I realized, what do we feed the puppy in? I had to do my research on where do you buy bowls. I had to call up people who were pet parents and saying what food to give, right? Of course, we didn't get it from the right place, and the breeder was extremely unhelpful once the payment went through. Please don't go through that route, is what I keep telling people. There are tons and tons of unethical breeders out there in India. But anyway, coming to that, to me, everything was a surprise. But most importantly, I think understanding the canine body language, which took me training. I had to go out, get trained to understand the canine body language, because I remember he was a puppy and he was clearly giving us signs that he was unwell. And because golden retrievers have a certain face, I thought he was smiling, right? And that was a sign of distress today, is what I understand. I think that was the biggest thing for me, just understanding the body language of my dog, right? That was one. I think the other surprise was I wasn't absolutely not prepared, because for me, raising a dog and any experiences I had known were from my dad's time of when he had pets, right? That was very different. The understanding, knowledge, research, right? And the way people treated pets itself were very different. I didn't realize that pets could mean a significant cost, and it required a lot of financial planning. So these two things.
So,
if
what
you've not
would
been
be
around, if you've not been around dogs or any pet for that matter, it's about a language, right? Whether you know a language or not, and
Yeah.
the dog is trying to communicate in the best way he or she
Yeah.
can, and whether
Yeah.
you
And dogs are great communicators, by the way. If they don't like something, they tell you. Just that humans, I don't think, are great listeners. So, yeah,
so, Achal, I wanted to know, let's say that, I have been considering to get a pet. So, what are some of the initial things that I should know about? What are some things to do it the right way?
sure. Uh, Again, all of these inputs that I have, Metha, are purely from my experience and the learnings that I've had. Okay, so that's a caveat I keep giving, so that because I don't want to be misquoted. And please, for the audiences, please seek professional advice. This is purely my experience. um, First and foremost, if you're getting a pet home, right, please reach out to a professional. This can be a canine behaviorist, to understand if your lifestyle, your phase of life, your situation at home, whether you have kids, whether you have older people at home, who is going to be the main handler, your budgets, finances, right? Are you and your family even ready to get a pet home, right? If there is a situation there where one person is wanting to get a pet home and there is somebody who is not accepting, it can lead to a lot of chaos, right? And not a very happy situation at home. I'm purely talking from pet's perspective here, is not even the greatest thing for your pet, right? So make sure you are all ready to get a pet and commit collectively. And please reach out to a professional to get a pre-puppy counseling, or a pre-homing a dog counseling, whatever the formal name for this is, to understand what dog is suitable for your lifestyle, right? It can be the age phase of dog, it can be where do you adopt a dog from, where do you get a dog from, the breed that might be suitable for your lifestyle, if at all of these information I think is step one. um, of course, and by the way, budgets and financing and finances and planning is part of that conversation that one must have. So that is step one for me, for you, Medha. There are a bunch of other
So,
things. I don't know how you want to proceed.
sure. So, can you just give me an example? Like, what do you mean that a breed should fit your lifestyle? Like, what does that mean?
Okay, again, not a professional, purely from experience of dogs that my friends have and dogs that I have. For example, I have a golden retriever who is predisposed to a bunch of joint, and they can be, right. This breed can be predisposed to joint related issues, right. It is important that if you have a lab or a golden retriever, this is to the best of my understanding, you actually have some activities like a hydrotherapy or a swimming or something, some activities that you are able to support so that your dog lives a good life, right. This is just one example that I'm giving you, right. Similarly, for other breeds, there may be other requirements that I'm not equipped to, of course, answer. So there are various things that different breeds might ask. Similarly, dogs at different ages behave differently. If it's a puppy, the puppy is going to be naughty, right? They're going to be jumpy. It will also mean extensive training that you put in during their puppyhood at the right time with the right behavior consultant, right? Because timing also matters, right? Like how kids learn best at a certain age, so do dogs, right? So it would mean consistently going and investing in a good canine behavior consultant, right? um, and finding that. And that is why I said, in my experience, and I wasn't prepared for any of that, right? My dog was a dinosaur growing up. So the right age of a dog suitable for your home is extremely important, right? The right breed probably as well. So that is what my experience has taught me, Medha.
Okay, so let's say that we have done like, if I had to put it, step one is assessing your suitability for the right breed, assessing how prepared you are financially, emotionally. Is everyone in the family on the same page about getting the dog, etc. We've done all of those things. Then what is kind of the next step, right? Like, so where can we get a dog from?
Various channels to get a dog from. I'm not going to comment on it purely, like specifically, because look, there are different points of views, right? There is adoption is a channel, buying a dog is a channel, ethical breeding issues exist in India, right? All of these things that I had no clue about before I got a dog. I am going to recommend to people that when you go to a behavior consultant, please understand from them on what is the best way to get a dog. There are shelters filled with dogs, right, ready to be homed. But whether that dog is right or not for you, I cannot be the one commenting on a public platform for sure, right? But various ways to get a dog home.
Okay.
Ethical breeding, we don't have standards in India, from what I understand. There are hardly any ethical breeders. Again, this is my understanding, limited, of course. So I wouldn't recommend people going through that phase at all. But please consult an expert, a right canine behavior consultant who can actually guide you through the process.
Okay. So that person will not only assess your readiness, they will also be able to guide you
They
in
may
terms
be
of.
able to. Yes, they may be able to. Yes, surely.
Okay. All right. So then, let's get to the financial side of things, because that was the main, topic for today. First, let's talk about what are the broad categories in terms of expenses. So, what are we looking at?
Sure. Okay, we spoke about the pre-adoption or pre-homing counseling, right? That is the first category of expenses, right? Because you would spend something on a behavioral consultant to get that counseling. Then, depending on the channel that you use to get your dog home, whether it is a shelter fee, if there is any, right, or any other cost that you incur to get a dog home, depending on the channel that you, of course, choose. Then there are starter supplies, and I categorically remember spending all that money on day one with my dog in my arms and my husband going and calling me and saying, "What do I get?" Right? It's the right food for them. The starter supply would mean food, water bowls, collar, leash, harness, dog bed, crate, toys, right? Grooming stuff, poop scooper, ID tags, all of that, right? That would be the third category overall. Fourth would be home preparation. How are you going to dog proof or puppy proof your home, right? And there is a cost involved to that. We can get into the details as and when you want me to. The next category would be health and medical expenses, something that I was completely unprepared for, right? So happy to talk about that in detail as well in a bit, as we go forward. Then, by the way, food and nutrition can be another big cost category in itself, other than the starter supplies that I mentioned. So that is a big category. Then, although it gets included in medical or vet expenses, but medical emergencies, which is not your day on day, month on month, year on year expenses, is another category that I would absolutely keep in mind. Yeah. Outside of that, some of the enrichment activities, or let's say first, the breed specific activities like swimming, like taking them for a sniffing walks, taking them for hiking for some breeds, all of that. Grooming is another category. Some breeds need more grooming, some breeds don't need as much. Especially my experience with friends who have Shih Tzus and breeds like that, they need a lot more grooming than, let's say, another breed for that matter. So that is another expense. Okay. Dog walking can be an expense if you want to outsource that activity, right? Daycare or boarding facilities can be an expense, because once you have a dog, there are going to be times when you need to either use a boarding facility or a daycare facility, or even pet sitters are an option these days, right? So yeah, now these are all the basic cost headers that most people need to incur costs for. Okay. But then there are some things which are absolutely good to do. I think they're a must, but I understand a lot of people don't think they're a must. That is enrichment in play, right? With dogs, in my experience, it has just not been enough that you just physically tire them, right? Or just do breed specific exercises. Enrichment has been a big part of it. So whether you want to invest in puzzle toys or kongs, or any breed specific games, some dogs do scent work, right? Those are again some things that we do. And finally, the category would be accessories and gears. For example, if you travel in a car, you need the right car accessories to get travel with your dog. Whether it is the hammock to keep your dog safe and in place, whether it is a seat belt for a dog, whether it is something that your dog can wear if he or she has to walk out in the rain, whether it is your collars, harnesses, leash, any training tools that you may require. And by the way, one very important one, I don't know how I missed it. Once you get a dog home, you will definitely need to, I think every dog should, but I understand people who are pet parents, have been pet parents from, the earlier experiences, don't choose that. I think everyone should invest in a good canine behaviorist, someone who believes with in teaching dogs with positive methods and not punitive methods. I think it changes your relationship with the dog. It definitely did for us, and even with friends who've had dogs earlier but chose to choose the right behavior consultant at the right time. So yeah, tons of categories made. Happy to deep dive
Yeah.
into it.
So, see, when Ankit usually, talks about financial planning, we always start with basically like calculating like what is the monthly expense, right? So then we know like what is the savings. Now, I understand with so many categories, there may be a lot of variability with the breed, like you rightly pointed out. So then, how can one kind of start putting some sense to the numbers, right? I think one, if you can just talk about what that variation may look like what is the lower end of it, what is the upper end of it, so at least people know, okay, this is the range.
And I think just to keep things simple, not going category wise, just broadly
Yeah, just
speaking,
overall,
time
yeah.
when yeah. So before getting the dog home, so on the behaviorist, expert that you're visiting, broadly, what may the total expense be? Bringing the home, if you need to pay, to bring the dog home, broadly the number that might look like. I understand key again from where you are getting the dog and the breed and stuff, it can vary a lot, but some numbers so that people are directionally they have a something, and then vaccination and then regular expenses.
Sure. I'll talk about some numbers that I know from my experience, or let's say my friends who've incurred expenses in. But allow me to say this for your audiences, that just like how we raise kids, and it is so different. Depending on which school are you sending your kid to, right? Is it an IB school or is it a government school? Your expenses are going to be two extremes, right? And it probably makes no sense unless you know what you want to do. But most of my experiences, you know. I would say that we are pet parents who wanted to do the right thing by our dog, not necessarily the best thing, not going out of our way, but still doing the right thing, so that we are not just focusing on a dog's survival, but hopefully make a dog thrive, right? That is where I'm coming from. And anything that I share would probably be stemming from there, including the expenses. Because look, there are people who take their dogs to government hospitals. I don't know how good they are. I don't know if they're good, bad, ugly. I have no idea. Okay, and maybe the expenses there are very different. Versus, let's say, if you're taking your dog to one of the good private vets, right, that exists, or a hospital, cost can really vary. But in my experience with the dog that I have, um, For example, if I'm going for a regular blood work, which is a CBC, LFT, KFT sort of a test, standard that I do once in 6 months for my dog, unless of course there is a need to. With my dog, by the way, with his health issues, he is an IBD dog. For people who don't know, IBD is a inflammatory bowel disease. It took us a very very long time to get things under control for him, and I don't think it's a condition we have to manage lifelong, right? That meant that at least the basic test we had to keep repeating over and over again, sometimes multiple times a month, right? But usually, if a dog doesn't have health issues and you get it done once a quarter, once in 6 months, this particular test, let's say, costs about 3K, in my experience. Okay. An ultrasound of an abdomen, I think, costed anything between 3 to 5K, if my memory serves me right. X-ray for joints, I think, was around 1.5K. Okay. Then there is also spaying and neutering costs. My dog is not neutered because of his health issues. We couldn't when he was supposed to. But if you go in for neutering and spaying, depending on the hospital that you go to, including the pre and the post-op care, right, and multiple other things that matter, it can cost between a 10 to 20K sort of a number. That's what I've known, at least the experiences that my friends have had. One disease which is very rampant and very unfortunate, right, is tick fever. It can have multiple strains, and different strains require different, treatment. Uh, there is a test called PCR to identify which strain of tick fever it is, right? If your dog has that. So other than the CBC, etc., that you will do, you are also probably required to run a PCR to identify which strain of tick fever that is. That can cost about 4.5K in today's state, right? Plus the hospitalization costs, etc. So these are just some of the expenses. To give you an example, let's say of the food, right? Food, again, there are various options available. There are people, there is kibble that's available in the market. There is fresh food options, right? Most of us today want to feed our dogs fresh food, right? But feeding fresh food also comes with a lot of responsibility, and you need to be able to serve your dog a balanced fresh food, right? Which adds to your cost of reaching out to a canine nutritionist, right? That cost can be about 3 to 5K, as a one-time cost for you to get the right recipes for your dog, right? And then the procurement cost, etc., would vary. However, there's also a choice where people choose to feed kibble, right? That can, of course, be lower in cost. And look, even in kibble, the cost really varies. There are pedigree, etc., some of them available, and then some. There are some really high quality kibble as well that's available. And then the third, there are some dogs with ongoing, issues or diseases or conditions, right, who have to be put on prescription diet, right? And that cost can also be high. So my dog was fed fresh food for the first many years, and I went to a canine nutritionist, got the right food, this that, but nothing would work because he had a condition that we didn't understand for a very very long time, right? Eventually, we moved him to hypoallergenic diet, which is prescription food. He hates it, of course, but that's the only thing that settled his system, etc. So for a golden retriever, if I have to keep him on a diet which is analergenic food, it's a prescription diet, we'll end up spending approximately, okay, 15,000 rupees on his food a month, right? This is just to give you a very very high estimate. Does not hold true for every dog of the same breed either. This is what just my experience of with my dog is. So yeah, very very broad numbers that I've shared.
Roughly, say if you're talking about, I mean, not for extreme cases, if you're talking about, say,
Yeah.
annual expense, how much will it be with the meal, with the regular medical expenses and other activities, approximately, or a range?
Very hard to answer that, even a range. Okay, I'll tell you why. Most, when we had Cookie and we had these experiences, it was very hard for me to find other pet parents who had similar experiences. Okay, it didn't seem like a common thing at all, and I seemed to be struggling for answers. Maybe I didn't have the right network or connects or whatever else, but it was struggling, right? Finding a canine nutritionist, I found one in the whole country, right, or two maybe. It was extremely hard to find the right behavior consultant. And so many answers today. There is just a lot more information available and way too many options available, because during COVID, I think this industry really boomed in India, right? Really, pets became like a hobby that people want to pursue, unfortunately, at one point in time. Very hard for me to give you a number, Ankit. But lately, I'm seeing more and more and more pets with a lot more conditions that I was able to find, let's say, 5 years back when I got Cookie. I don't know if it's a result of unethical breeding practices. I don't know if it's a result of too many dogs suddenly coming in, or maybe I just have that network that I'm seeing. So I don't even know if my dog is an exception anymore. Okay. And I want people who want to get dogs home to understand that this may not be an exception. I don't have data or numbers to share, purely anecdotal experience is what I'm sharing here. So I would say that everybody really prepared for it, right? All the information is available on Amazon, whether it is your packaged food, right? There is so much information on canine nutritionists, who are there. All of us know how much, protein, etc. costs. So very hard for me to say what are the annual numbers look like. But for a large breed, in my experience, irrespective of what I have been feeding my dog, because that is the primary, expense. And if I also keep the vet bills away, I would say on an average about 20,000 a month. This is without any medical emergencies expenses, not keeping in mind vaccinations, etc. Okay. uh, when
Okay.
I got a puppy home, when Cookie was a puppy, and I remember asking a friend of saying, "How expensive is it to maintain a dog?" Because I started figuring out that it is not something as simple as just get a toy home. Uh, the response I got was 5-6 thousand. It is possible that we overdo some things, but that is what we think is important, and hence we feed a certain quality of food to our dog. It's by choice, right? So I would say to each his own, and please decide what you think is best for your dog and do consult experts.
So, Achal, the expert that you're talking about, right? When you keep saying expert, you're saying there's a nutrition expert, there's a behavior expert. So let's say that I want to understand more about the expenses involved. Like, I have a dog, and now because all financial planning comes down to this number. So
Yeah.
and now in the scenario that I have a dog, look, because there's a question that we're getting, that I have a Siberian Husky and an English Cocker Spaniel. What should I ideally spend a month? Now, that question may not be the right one for us to answer,
Yeah.
but if let's say I go to a behaviorist, is that the right person who can help me understand these costs? Like, who is the right person to like help me
I
understand?
would say there are different experts for different things, okay? But understand the categories right. I'm happy to, in fact, share the list. It is my experience, right? With you, please share it with the audiences who have these questions, right? Get the categories right and do your research on each category. If you're doing the right thing by your dog, or if you want to get a dog home, what would it cost? But let's say a behavior consultant, I have spoken to many, I have worked with a couple, of them so far. By the way, it's very hard to find the right pet professional in India, and I have to say that I have struggled finding any professional, whether it was a vet that worked for us, whether it was a canine nutritionist, whether it was a behavior consultant, whether it was a physiotherapist or a hydrotherapist, sorry, for my dog. It has taken us a very long time to find the right people. Okay. But once you do, I can share what my experiences on commercials broadly have been. Okay. With trainers, in my experience, I think the cost, and this was back then, okay, 4 5 years back. So cost may have changed today. Please apply inflation.
Sorry, Achal, before you get into it, can you tell us the broad categories? Like, ye experts hote hain, and
Ah,
then you get into the cost. So first,
sure.
just understand what is the spectrum.
Sure. In my experience, I have worked with a hydrotherapist because I have a golden retriever, so it was important for him. I have worked with vets. I have worked with vets, of course, for medical, stuff. I have worked with canine behaviorists. I have worked with canine nutritionists. These are four categories that I have worked with so far. Okay, there are a few more categories, but I haven't. There can be a dog walker that you might want to interact with. Also, dog boarding. Everybody pretty much needs it. So these six categories of experts, and all of these six things, including pet walking and pet boarding, in my mind, requires some sort of expertise, right? Or some experience, right? So going with each category, pet training or pet behavior related stuff, in my experience, has costed me for the entire program 4 5 years back anything between a 25,000 and a 40,000 rupee sort of a number. It might have increased today, so I'm pretty sure about this. Canine nutritionists, between 3 and 5K for one time this thing, right? If you go for a lifetime package, etc., of course the package would be much higher. It can go up to 15 20,000 as well if you're taking a lifetime package, but that is very very far and few in the country. Okay. Also to know that I don't know if we have properly certified canine nutritionists in the country. US has very strict standards. Even with a lot of certifications, people call them nutritionists. So please do your research and figure out if you're talking to the qualified nutritionist. Same goes with behavior consultants, right? We call them behavior consultants, not behaviorists. There is some background, etc., that's needed. I'm not qualified to respond on either of them, but please do your research. Okay. So, okay, I was talking about different categories. Nutritionist, I told you the amount. Third is the vet. Vet is, of course, any medical bills that you will pay. I don't have a number for the vet because you don't pay the vet fee as such, but you pay medical expenses that I already shared a bunch of numbers with you all, right? By the way, annual vaccinations cost approximately 3 3.5K. at least the private hospitals that I have my experience in, right? Then boarding can cost anywhere between 500-600 bucks to about 1,500 rupees, depending on how you are boarding. Is it a kennel setup? Is it a home boarding? Is it people who just like dogs and just don't have it but want to just keep them as boarding? But it's again extremely important you find the right boarding, because if not taken care of, and if let's say exposed to other dogs who may not have the right conducive behaviors for your dog can come back with trauma and other behavioral issues. This happened with me at one point in time. My dog started reacting to other dogs after that half a day boarding experience. Please don't do that. Find out, do your research. There are a bunch of things to be done, but yeah, from a cost perspective for this session, that's the range that I have.
So the
uh,
600, 1,500 that you're saying is per what? Per time
day,
that you're
per
putting
day, typically
per
per
day.
day. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like the lower end would be 600-700 in my experience, 1,500. We also have pet sitters. I have spoken to, at least inquired with multiple pet sitters, and I got a very very varied number. I understand why it is, because people literally have to leave everything and come and stay at your home while you are away so that your dog is comfortable. But the cost has been anything from 700-800 rupees a day to about 3,000-4,000 a day also, that was asked, right? So I don't know, I don't have enough experience with pet sitters either, so to be honest, but that's what I found out.
And
Okay.
dog walking, I think, is the last one.
Dog walking, again, different. I don't have enough experience because I do walk my dog myself, unless of course I've needed help if I was unwell or something. I've paid around 4-5K a month for dog walking for once, 30-minute, 40-minute walk a day, something on those lines, is what my experience has told me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that was helpful because I think other things that we can still
Leash
is dependent
hunting.
on our lifestyle and breed, but I think these are some kind of costs that we should be aware about. So Ankit, like an important part, I think, of financial planning is understanding how to manage this expense, right? So I think we've understood that there is no number that we can kind of work with. But let's say, for example, I have estimated that to take care of my dog, I spend 20,000 a month. I'm just giving random example. I don't have a dog, but so how then would you suggest someone to start planning their finances around this? So and I know the SailCoin framework is something that we use for financial planning in general. So how would you apply the SailCoin framework to taking care of a pet monthly expense of 20,000?
Sure. So first of all, the 20,000 that you have identified is the cost for the dog that you have, the breed that you have, and the kind of lifestyle that you like to offer. Are you in a comfortable place that you can spend this 20,000 on a monthly basis, like on a regular basis? And just like any other expenses, there will be one-offs, that those unexpected expenses. So first of all, 20,000 per month from your income, household income that you are getting, are you comfortably able to afford it? And shouldn't have a meaningful impact on your savings. Okay, just thinking it from the long-term perspective, because again, dogs are also a long-term relationship, right? So whether you'll be able to sustain that, and just with expenses, the expenses, the 20,000 that we are talking about, that number is also going to go up. And generally speaking, the inflation uh, is not going to be same, because it's a very a niche, right? And whenever there is any item, any segment which is a niche, the inflation number on those side is just on the higher side. So you can't apply, say, 5%, 6% inflation on the cost that is associated, say, with your pet. So just being mindful of it, whether you can do the regular expenses, because that is going to be the most important one. And overall, it is also going to have the biggest impact for in most of the cases. So that is there. Then just just as I say, with every financial planning, you need to have an emergency fund. So again, if you're talking about, say, 20,000 of monthly expense, six times of it, 20,000 should, sorry, six times of 20,000, so 1.2 lakhs, 1.5 lakhs is something that you should definitely have in emergency fund. And if you think based on the breed that you have, the chances of some unexpected expenses, whatever it may be, behaviorist or medical expenses, vaccination, or whatever it is, if that risk also exists, then again, you need to increase your emergency fund, the size of your emergency fund. Again, it's going to be important. One thing, what I want, again, just following SailCoin here, Meera. So next thing that I will be there in the the structure of the framework is the coverage, right? So Aachal, I would like to ask you, how's the insurance, for the dog, like health insurance, if I may call it, if something happens? So Sorry,
Oh,
you were
you're
on.
on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I was saying I had inquired about the pet health insurance about 3 years back. This was the time when it had really hit us that our dog's, health was at its worst, and we were literally running from vet to vet and hospitalizations and blood work throughout, and also matter of luck, he was really going through one episode to the other. Got tick fever and the worst of its kind, and his IBD really blew up because of all the medication that he had to take on his tick fever. So, like throughout a year, it really hit us. It was very, very expensive as an affair, and that's when I started inquiring about pet insurance, thinking maybe that is something that we should consider. Back then, I spoke to two insurance providers, and I realized that none of them actually helped out. They would not take care of any regular blood work. They would not take care of any terminal, illnesses. One of the things they offered is saying, "Hey, we give you at least at that point in time some 40, 50,000 if you lose your pet, and the pet runs away or something, right? In case you misplace your pet or something." I remember looking at an insurance, a good company, not naming them here now because I don't know what the status today is, that didn't recognize labs as a breed, something like, it was very chaotic. Okay, and a lot of things that should have been included for the insurance to make sense were not. So I then decided to not go in for insurance, because also I completely lost trust after talking to some of the insurance providers back then, that there'll actually be any reimbursements that would come my way. But that was my experience, like I said, 3 years back. Could have been my experience in isolation. So it'll be great if there are any audiences who have who have a similar experience, to actually put it in comments. I instead decided to go in and start doing an SIP of a certain amount month on month, so that I can use that as an emergency fund, right? And that came in really handy and helped us plan our finances really well.
So this become even more important, right? If you can't have the insurance in place. So guys, as Medha, as
Maybe
Aashil,
it's better today, okay? So worthwhile
exactly. So
to check
she was
out.
saying her experience was this 3 years back, and as she also mentioned earlier, the pet parenting has kind of picked up. So there are a lot more lot more pet parents now. So things might have changed because of the demand might have gone up. So check it out and read the the finer terms carefully, because with any insurance or any policy that you are coming across, you should read that. But many times, when we are doing it for taking an insurance for ourselves, we don't take it standard. It's standard. uh, for us, many a times are under proper regulations, so it can still be covered. And you, in case, even if you haven't read those finer terms in detail, you will still find people and some regulations around it that will support you. I mean, fight is something that anyways you'll have to do. But given that pets are not very under proper regulations, the services for them, it may be difficult for you to get benefits from the insurance. So read the finer terms carefully. And if you just like Achal, if you also decide, okay, it's not worth the effort, or whatever amount of money you're paying for this insurance, that your emergency fund should be on the higher side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely propagate that everybody have an emergency fund, because there are so many conditions that we may not even know about, even as pet parents who had pets for years, treating which can be extremely expensive, right? God forbid any of your pets have to go through this, but please be prepared so that finances don't come in the way of giving your pets the right treatment, especially medical expenses, right? So I highly recommend that all pet parents have the right uh, you know uh, emergency fund with them. I would say up to about 1 to 2 lakhs would be a fair number to to have.
Emergency fund is very important, particularly in the app. I will say not lack of, but more like a complete absence in a way of insurance. So
Yeah,
be aware of that, and I think that should cover most of it on the financial side. It should cover most of the planning for the pet.
yeah, absolutely.
So, Ankit, one of the things that we have, introduced on in Wealthup is that people can set goals, right? Like for various things that they want to plan for, like vacations and stuff. So, is it worthwhile then to set a goal for, your pet, and how would one go about doing that?
See, as far as financial goals are concerned, Mitha, you when you're setting it up, if there is anything which is not your regular expense, not your monthly expense, just to be clear, you should have that that sort of goal. Like for example, Achal set aside an SIP, right? So whatever the number is, let's go with say 100 rupees. If she's doing 100 rupees of SIP every month, roughly we are talking about 1200 rupees per month. But that 1200 will also get depleted from time to time, right?
Yeah,
As expenses come up. So that 100 rupees should keep going, and there is a way, if it is building up, how to manage that. But that needs to be there, again, for building the emergency fund. If you've identified that there needs to be a decent amount of money that you need to spend, like in the first, I don't know, maybe 3 months of when you're getting your dog home, for everything that we initially, the initially expenses that we talked about, whatever that number is, you need to prepare for that. So similarly, whatever, identify the number. When is it that you're thinking of going for it? So say, if you want to buy, get that, bring that dog home, say in 6 months time, uh, just mentally, emotionally preparing for it is one side, and parallelly, financial preparation can also go on. Like something again
So,
similar to
so
SIP.
that's what I'm. Thanks for summarizing that. So that's what I'm saying. How do we actually go about doing that?
So it's very simple. Just like every other goal, you can go on the website, or go on Wealthup's website, log in, and go to the goal section, goal tracker, and add that goal. Okay, so just a number, I'm putting up. Okay, suppose I want 1 lakh rupees. I'll be needing 1 lakh rupees, say in 6 months' time, when I'll be bringing my pet home. So either you put some lump sum, you just put that number, and it'll guide you. Okay, what is the number that you'll be needing? Okay, say 50,000, 20,000 is what I can invest today. So what is the remaining SIP number monthly? That will be needed to reach this goal on time. Okay, and similarly, like when you're building your SIP, building your emergency fund, okay, 2 lakh rupees is what I need to get to. Uh, how soon do you want to get there? Based on that number will be calculated. Either you can go with that, and if say that is not something that you can comfortably afford, then keep say I'm talking about reaching say 2 lakhs in say a year's time. Uh, Roughly speaking, you will need to put in some 16, 17,000 per month. Now, if that is something that you're not comfortable with, you're like, okay, I can put aside only 10,000. Okay, start with 10,000, then you won't be able to achieve it in 1 year, but still a good place to start from, right? Okay, 10,000 is still a better number than zero, much better number. Okay, so it will guide you with those things.
Okay. So, because that is, I think, very important. Many times, what we have seen people do, the mistake is that they save this money in their bank account, which is, like you rightly said, that money is not growing, right? So, that is why setting an SIP and investing that money makes more sense in like a very low
See,
risk
we are in
benefit.
a falling interest rate environment, right? Say the biggest of banks like HDFC, SBI, they are offering interest rate in the ballpark of 2.5 to 3% per year, for the money that is in your bank account. Now, first of all, the inflation number that is coming, lately, I mean, the numbers have improved, based on which the inflation, the interest rate has been reduced. But for all practical purposes, those are not the real inflation that is going to impact you. Like comfortably 5-6% is something that is impacting you, and you're losing money there. So always better to invest your money in a place where you can get a return, uh, at least more than the inflation. And a low risk debt fund will be a good place to park your funds. Understand that there is no risk investment. Every investment has some risk, whether you realize it or not, and whether the risk is high or low. Okay, so these are very low risk investments that you can go for. And yeah, like with any say debt investment, debt mutual fund, say investment, it will take around 2 business days to come to your account. So just be mindful of that. It does take that amount to get to reach your bank.
Okay. So I think we've talked about a lot of different aspects, and I think we've covered a lot of ground. As we kind of close this session, I just wanted to ask some questions to cover anything that we may have missed. So first, Anchal, asking you, is there anything that you want to share with the audience that you feel we haven't covered in terms of advice, tips, anything for pet parents?
Uh, I think we've covered the whole gamut of it, Medha. I think I would just like to summarize by saying that, when you're getting home a dog, of course, financial investment is something both all of us have spoken enough about. It's also a lot of emotional, availability that is required. It requires commitment and discipline. It is a lot more than what we see on Instagram, right? I wish I had gone to the right people, or I was in company of the right people to know a lot of this better, right? Changing your lifestyle in a day is not easy or possible. Same goes for financial planning. Please plan it in advance and do better. And let's all keep our dogs like we, do with family members. I'm not saying humanize your dogs, but I'm just saying let's do enough to make them thrive in the environment that they are in, right? Uh, let's
Yeah.
understand their body language. Let's make some structure available for them so that they are canine good citizens, right? And they're not a nuisance for everybody around. That requires money and that requires patience. Feed them the right food which is species appropriate or appropriate for their condition. right? Let's take them to the right vets, let's take them to the right boardings, right? um, uh, and that is all that I would say. But overall, while it sounds like a lot of work, pets are also great companions to have, right? So you quoted a bunch of studies to begin with, Mida, and the positive impact of pets, right? So outside of the science, I think they just increase your happiness quotient. So yeah, they are a lot of work, but if you're ready to commit for it, there's nothing like having a pet home.
So, Achal, I think one thing I want to ask you that I think will be important because you talked a lot about research. You said do your research. So, I think it'll be worthwhile if you can share some places where people can get the right information. So, I think we all start by Googling, or nowadays, I think it's ChatGPT, but or Perplexity or whatever. But maybe if you have some sources which you have found to be really good that you can recommend, or books that you've read, or any like places where we can go to get the right information.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, so a few things that I've learned over years, right? Uh, One is so on two things, right? Uh, One is on canine behaviors, right? The fact that your dog doesn't only need to be trained, but we do that not to make them do circus tricks, but the fact that they are more obedient. My dog is not obedient, by the way, despite all my efforts. Ankit will vouch for it. But but the fact that they are canine good citizens in general, right, is important. And for that, finding a trainer or finding a behavior consultant who can help you achieve that through positive reinforcement methods and not through punitive methods is important, right? So using those choker, those collars, and all sorts of not very nice, not very kind ways of training, uh, at least in my experience, in my research, is something that I don't think it's needed. I'm sure there are some cases where these are mandatory and experts would know better. But for a regular pet that you're getting home, kinder positive reinforcement sort of really enables it. So please find yourself someone who can help you understand why this will or will not work for you, right? Ask for qualifications, ask them for their experience. If there's someone who's getting offended because you ask them for their qualification, whether it is a behavior consultant, whether it is a nutritionist, please, in my experience, run away, right? If somebody has an ego big enough to say that someone, and they don't want to respond to a pet parent or a prospective pet parent who's doing their research and sharing their credentials is a problem, I would absolutely not recommend, right? So please ask them for their qualifications. Go back and then use Google and ChatGPT to understand what is the qualification of a behavior consultant or a behaviorist, right? Do they have any stories and testimonials to share? Talk to some people if you can, to understand what their experience has been. Instagram has actually made it extremely simple, right, for us to be able to get access to some of those people. So please do that, right? When it comes to canine nutrition, there are different standards of, how do you balance fresh food. One is NRC, one is AFCO, a few others. So read about those, right? Those are international standards of, what of canine nutrition. So make sure when you reach out to a behavior consultant, ask them what standards do they follow, what courses have been done, and then go back on Google and check what is the qualification of a canine nutritionist, right? And do they meet that qualification or not, right? Just because someone has a great Instagram account and a great followership and they sound very convincing does not necessarily make them the right people for the job. And I have had problems with exactly following that, when I got a dog home. So for anybody, like, that you go to any expert, and we've spoken about so many, check their qualifications, right? Like in a human doctor, we check whether somebody's an MBBS or an MD or something. Similarly, go back and read about what the qualification should be and then ask for credentials. Unfortunately, it's a very unregulated industry and there is no barrier to entry in most places, of course, other than the vets.
Thanks, Anchal. That was helpful. So, what I gathered from that is essentially it's very important to find the right expert to kind of guide you, and then make sure that before you select that expert, you're looking at their
Right.
credentials because it's and the right qualifications because they're not because the industry is so highly unregulated. Which
Yes.
actually ties in perfectly with our whole mantra is that get a financial guide to help you because I mean, as with most things, there's just so much information out there, and nowadays it's so hard to tell the difference between someone who speaks well and is like speaks confidently, charismatically, versus someone who actually knows their stuff. So I think
Correct.
that applies generally to all fields.
Absolutely.
Um, Definitely. Okay, cool. So I wanted to end. We are like at 59 minutes, but quick rapid fire, right? Like just wanted to capture some key messages from the conversation today. So first, Ankit, I want to ask you, and keep your answers very brief, like just couple of words or very short. Ankit, what was your biggest takeaway from the conversation today?
It's a big responsibility. Bringing a pet home is a big responsibility. You should be aware and be prepared for it, and seek help just to understand how big a responsibility it is.
Yeah.
And what is something surprising from today's chat that you're like, oh wow, ye to pata hi nahi tha?
तो ये the amount of responsibility that is there and how common it has become to have for the pets to have so many conditions, right? With which is if you think about again in the hindsight shot, I mean humans are also having so many conditions just based on the again the lifestyle, the air we are breathing, the water we are having and whatnot. But pets are also so much impacted and so much care is needed because again particularly the kind of people that we are talking to here who are listening to this podcast, they want to be a responsible pet parent. So for them, it is a big responsibility being aware that these things can happen, and it's becoming more and more common. So that was a little
Okay.
surprising.
Okay, that was not short at all. That was very long. But I will see if Aachal does any better. But Aachal, okay, quick questions, right? Like, what is one pet expense that you didn't see coming?
uh, Hospitalization and medical expenses. I had no idea, like I said at the beginning of the podcast.
Okay. What is one thing that you highly recommend buying or getting for your pet?
Good to do, uh, not good to do actually. Two things I'm going to recommend. One, breed specific activities. Like you have to see your dog thrive. When I see my dog swimming, I can see how it changes his behavior and everything else around him, right? So please invest in that. It also, in my mind, probably also increases their lifespan, right, in many, many ways. So that is one. And second, if you can actually invest in enrichment toys, if your dog is the right dog for it, again, I'm not recommending every dog does it, right? So in the right way and for the right dog, enrichment activities, whether it's a autism game or Kong toys, or even you have a dabba and put a treat and put a tape on it and let them trash it. So anything, it doesn't have to be a lot of money involved necessarily. I think are a great, are some of the good to do things in my
Okay.
experience.
And like if someone missed the entire thing, right, and they're just watching now, they've just joined us. One piece of advice, like final advice that you would give to someone. I would say one for someone who is considering getting a dog, and one for someone who already has a dog.
For someone who's considering getting a dog, please invest your time and listen to this conversation again. I have shared some very raw feedback or raw experiences that I faced as a pet parent who didn't know enough. I wish there was somebody who had spoken to me and given me all, shared their experiences. Second, whether you have a dog already or not, please understand the different pillars, if I may say so, or different experts you should have in your lives, or you should do your research about, whether it's a canine behavior consultant, whether it is for pre-puppy counseling and before getting a dog home or later, whether it's a canine nutritionist, whether it's the right vet, whether it's your dog boarding facility, your dog walkers, etc. Please get your entire ecosystem right, and more importantly, and most importantly, make sure you and your family are ready to get the right dog home. Please don't get a dog home and then want to rehome it. I'm not judging anybody for doing anything, but I'm just saying make sure you are better prepared already.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest takeaway as well. Because, like you said at the very beginning, I just wanted a husky because I think they look amazing, but I don't even know if I'm the right person. Probably not because I am not an active person, so I should not get a
From what I
husky.
know, huskies need a lot more exercise, a lot of
Yeah, so
physical
clearly not
activities,
the right breed
etc.,
for
running
me.
and this and that.
Yeah,
So from what I know,
I
okay,
need a breed that like sits and watches TV, like whatever that breed is. But no, thank you so much, Achal, for taking the time and like for doing this. I think our whole point of having these conversations is to talk about really real things that affect our finances on a day-to-day basis. Thanks everyone for joining us for this conversation. There are still
Just
people
adding the
watching.
disclaimer again, we are not pet experts. We were just having a conversation with real life experience. So if you want proper advice on the pet side, do consult an expert. Okay, we were
Yeah,
just having a conversation from real life experience.
yeah,
thanks for putting
and
this up. I don't want hate coming on me post this session.
Absolutely.
and no, definitely, and like do join us. I just wanted to thank everyone who's viewing because there are still people who are like who have been with us for the last hour and 5 minutes. So thank you so much for watching. We keep doing sessions every fortnight, so come and talk about um, other topics that we have been that we are planning. So there's one that we are planning on family planning. There's one that's coming up on real estate. So very real conversation, very practical advice. And if you do want to know about the financial side of things. So I think maybe Achal, I would add that, if someone wants help on like actually how to invest better, where should they set up their SIPs and emergency fund, then you come and talk to us. We'll be happy to help out with that as well.
I wish you all had
So,
helped me 5 years back.
yeah, and thanks so much, and have a lovely weekend, everyone. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. All right, bye bye.
Thank you, Achal. Thanks, Meeta.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.